Okay, welcome back everybody for another great discussion here this week. My name is Greg Suki here with Harry Durbitsky and John Countryman this week. And the topic we're going to talk about, and obviously if you have anything else that you want to talk about, feel free to bring it up. This is just kind of a starting point. But somebody on last week's discussion asked, what is psychological as far as the three principles are concerned? And it brought up a good point, which is what are really the implications of addiction as far as our psychological and spiritual nature. And Harry asked me to kind of start this off with what that really means to me. And for me, it's really become it's much more clear lately. I even just had a bit of an insight a couple of days ago into this type of thing, and it really hit me how pure and untouchable that spiritual side of us is. That formless side that some people call it the spark within, or the peace of God, or whatever you want to call it. There's something in us that is always whole and always well and untouchable, and it is just absolutely pure and beautiful. And it can only appear to not be that way. And that's the stories that we make up. That's really what the psychological side is the form side. That's our thinking, maybe even the content of our thinking. I don't like to get into that, but it's more about that ability to think, and it's just the formless side. So things that we can kind of touch and feel, and even emotions and stuff like that, which are really thought anyway. But that's the only side of us that can actually be injured, in my experience. When the injury goes away or starts to fade, that space within us that's always whole just naturally comes back. There's nothing we really have to do. And it works the exact same way with addiction. Addiction is really just habitual thought patterns. So those thoughts that have become subconscious thought patterns, they look like they're out of our control. They look like we're powerless over them. Like it's something really outside of us that's causing that. But it really is just our own made up thought patterns. When I say made up, I don't mean that we intentionally sat down one day and said, I'm going to be addicted. It doesn't really work that way. But when we reach out for something outside of us to help solve a feeling inside of us, that starts that thought pattern. And the more often we do it and reach out for that same thing, it becomes habitual and it becomes subconscious. But regardless of how deep that thought pattern goes, there is still something further inside that's untouched. And that's kind of what I'd like to talk about today. I know Harry has something he'd like to share, but if anybody would like to share, just feel free to unmute yourself, or if you click on the participants tab, you can click the raise hand button, and I'll kind of work you in as soon as we get an opportunity. So that's what I've got. Harry, what do you have?
First of all, we want everybody today to get a clear understanding of the spiritual and psychological realms of life. And I love this topic because I think it's a topic that everybody is interested in. How do those two worlds become one? And within the context of it, how come we see them separate if they are one? And Sid definitely says they are one. And we have experienced this oneness. Pretty well everybody in this room has experienced this oneness from time to time. And then we experience the separation of it. One of the things that in the psychological realm is that in the past, that the past controls us when we're in a lower level of consciousness. And the past doesn't control us when we're in a higher level of consciousness. So that to me is the definition of psychology on one level. You know, how much are we going to let the past dominate who we are in our beliefs and in the way we live, compared to when on a higher level, we just automatically feel one with who we are and one with the universe on the type of level. And one of the thoughts I had was, if we didn't have now, all we'd have is our memories. And those memories, I wouldn't want to live in all my memories, to tell you the truth. They're not that sweet. I have some beautiful, beautiful memories, but I have stuff coming in. And without the now, all we would have is we'd be a product of our past. But with the advent of with the now, that's where total healing and connection to the spiritual and to the formlessness that Greg was talking about is in existence. And so we better kiss this now that we are so unaware of, that we can walk in. And the lady from Oklahoma was talking about being in a state of meditation. That's what I'm talking about. What was your name again? Sorry, 4056579.
Ashley.
Ashley.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah, Ashley. Mm-hmm. So what Ashley was talking about when she was talking about being in a state of meditation, she intuitively found a healing and an understanding without words to what her memories were colliding in herself. And so I'd like to give a little bit of a metaphor. I was thinking about this. What is this psychological world and this spiritual world? Let's say you were going to ride a horse, a wild, wild, wild horse. Let's call this horse Life. And we get on this horse and we try to ride it. And sure enough, it bucks us off and we fall on the ground. And as we fall on the ground, we hurt ourselves. Some people get up off the ground and other people go, oh my God, that really hurt. And then they get scared, and they get scared to get on the horse again. And so they start to get on, but they're afraid, and it bucks them off. And after a while, they develop sort of a trauma and a fear around getting on that horse again. And that's an example of how this ride that we're on can really create a trauma or a fear inside of ourselves of getting on the horse. And another person, the same thing happens. He falls off and he says, all right. And he gets back on the horse and he rides the horse and he falls off again. He says, that son of a bitch, you no good, rotten so-and-so. And he gets on again and he rides that horse again. And before long, what happens is the horse starts, and the spirit of the horse and the spirit of this man kind of come together, and the horse starts to like it. And he finally gives in, and he becomes, you start to ride. That's what our life is. We have to tame our life. It's a crazy ride, and we never know what the spirit of the horse is. It can be very wild and vicious, and it can bring us all these different types of things. But it's not the horse. That's the psychology. It looks at the form. Psychology is just an expression of the form of the spirit. And we have come to believe that it's a really important way to see life. But the reality of it is, it's the spirit of the horse, the spirit of your life that creates all the adventure and excitement and thrill. And within that, there are levels and levels and levels of connecting to the horse, to the spirit of the horse. So that spirit is what we want to taste, we want to feel, we want to experience. And that's what I was talking to the lady in Oklahoma. In the program, The problem is these people are incredibly spiritual, but they've lost their connection to the spirit. They've become lifeless. They've been trying really hard, and so psychologically, they're not connecting. Now, Sid would describe psychologically. He said this on a talk. He asked Roger Mills, Dr. Roger Mills, what is psychological? And they laughed and didn't know. And he said, psycho or psyche, that's another word for soul. So it's the logic of the soul, psychological, logic of the soul. Another word for soul, consciousness, logic of consciousness. So we are here to uncover the logic of our soul, of our consciousness. And if we look at it from that perspective, we're not looking at it as a problem-oriented reality. We're looking at it as a spiritual journey. So before we go into our discussion, I got a little reading. I hope this works. Oh, I can hardly see. Let's see. Can you still see me? Good. Okay, this is from The Enlightened Gardener Revisited. And this guy asked Andy, and I've been wondering what spiritual truths have to do with psychology. What I've been saying to you, Eric, has everything to do with psychology. Right now, we are discussing the essence of every human being's psychological makeup. I told him that I could not connect what he was talking about to our profession. And he looked at me and sighed heavily. Eric, what many don't realize is that when our thoughts are working strictly from the human plane, we are somewhere between the physical plane and the spiritual plane. And this is where the confusion and lostness of humanity prevails. Another way to say the same thing would be that when we are using our personal minds from the lower level of consciousness, we are using the power of the egotistical self, which inevitably leads to mental suffering and the same old problems that have plagued humanity since the absolute beginning of time. On the other hand, when we are using the gift of the universal mind properly, we are using the power of our own innate wisdom, and that is where the secret to all knowledge lies. Listen to this one, guys. By delving into sickness too much and ignoring the mental health that lies within, you will build a belief system on a quagmire riddled with quicksand. When you and Janet fail to see is that you are concentrating and trying to find out how people think or what they think, when you should be looking at the fact that people think. One is after the form and the other is before the form. Therefore, the understanding of the three principles is both a cure and a prevention for the errors that may occur in the human thought system. These same three principles connect psychology and psychiatry as having the same quest. Listen to this quest, guys, to help the client. They are the missing link that changes psychology from a philosophy into a working science. I just felt I wanted to read that to you guys because we talk a lot about this stuff, but to get to the essence of what Sid's message is, it's a lot easier. It's a lot simpler than describing a lot of details. Would you agree, Catherine? You have to unmute yourself. Oh, that's, yeah. So, anybody got something to add? How about you, Anthony? You've come back a couple of times. You look so relaxed. I love that about you. You just sit back and just take, come on, say something about that. Go ahead.
Thanks for putting me on the spot.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
I am comfortable. This is a good place. I was given a crash course into the 3 principles at Gulf Breeze Recovery. And it changed my life, that's for sure. I appreciate this group. Thank you.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. And did you, can you tell us one little thing you learned, like that you saw at this recovery? That this is a place, by the way, that Greg has told me about that he's very impressed with. Is that correct? Is that the one, Greg?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, Gulf Breeze Recovery is doing a lot of good work.
Say one thing that you know that made a difference for you.
That my past doesn't define me, and that I am the creator of the experience.
Wow.
Life-changing.
Well, that's pretty powerful. That by the way, those words you said there'll be deeper and deeper meanings for you for that. But the more you relax with it, like you're doing, obviously the deeper it comes. It's in the quiet that we learn things, not in the talking and so on. Okay. Anyone else? How about you, Tanya? You like the psychological and spiritual world?
Thanks for putting me on the spot as well. Yeah, no, I'm just listening today. I mean, it just all makes sense. Yeah, it just makes sense. I'm really tired today, so I'm just going to relax and listen. But thank you.
No problem. No problem. Anyone else after, I guess, yeah. What did you think about what Sid had to say? Oh, go ahead, Catherine.
The thing that comes to mind for me and continues to transform the way I relate to the clients that I serve and engage with in my work is that I have difficulty distinguishing between psychological and spiritual. So for me, it's all becoming integrated into seeing my personal thought and what it does for me, and then seeing what universal mind brings when I allow it to work through me. And it comes down to love and understanding. It's so simple. It's just so simple. And then everything flows from that place when I'm willing to not get complicated about my own understanding of the 3 principles, but to bring love and understanding, just a little more love and understanding every day to the work that I do, and to be willing to connect with clients and coworkers who think it's very, very complicated, innocently. So it's just the fact that we know that we're not broken, that we have this inner wisdom, that we're all part of this spiritual energy that can move through us and is moving through us, is just a beautiful thing to relate to clients from that place. It's just, you just get a deeper and deeper sense of gratitude for whatever it is that allows you to see people as unbroken. It doesn't matter what they're doing. It doesn't matter if they're still using. It doesn't matter if they had a psychotic breakdown yesterday. You know that this is within you, and because it's within you, you know it's within them. So it's just, I'm so grateful for that keeps becoming simpler and also more profound at the same time. And it ends up just looking like loving people, and all the practical details of what you might be able to do for them comes from that place. So, and for addictions for myself, I mean, geez, I just, there's so much freedom in this understanding that, I've had my own story of addiction in my life, and the freedom from from that desire for anything on the outside, because there's so much going on the inside. You know, the outside stuff just can't compare anymore. That's really beautiful, you know, and that's really beautiful to live that, because that's what gives other people hope. I mean, I loved all that outside stuff. I loved that bottle of wine. I loved that, whatever it was that I was using, I loved it for a while, you know, and then it wasn't, you know, it wasn't doing what I thought I wanted it to do anymore. And there was a grace in that. It was a beautiful, beautiful grace in that, because I started to put the bottle down and put the outside stuff away and started to look within. So when you've done that yourself and you're so full of joy and you know that that's possible, you just, you know, it doesn't matter what people are doing. It doesn't matter what behaviors they're still involved in. I work with people who are still involved in active addiction, and it doesn't matter. I don't get freaked out anymore the way some of my colleagues do. And there's something beautiful about that. It's beautiful for me. It's as beautiful for me as it is for those clients. When I walk in and it's a fresh start, I just, you know, because I know that whatever potential resides within me also, you know, is within them. So, and I don't have to do it or fix them, or I just have to show up every day and keep loving them. And sometimes I get an opportunity to share what I've seen from this understanding, and it's just a beautiful
Feeling.
Yeah, thanks, Harry. That's all.
One of the things you mentioned that I love is it's not about sharing the 3 principles. It's about sharing the feeling.
Oh, Harry, oh boy, did I have to learn that. You know, it's like, yeah, that's a beautiful point to make, because I and so many people, I got caught up. I needed to tell people about this. People don't care about that. They want to know you love them and you understand them. And you know, and, you know, some people might be interested, but most, you know, I'm really learning about the rapport and connection, you know, putting that first. I think it was Jack Pransky. I heard him say, if you don't have rapport and if you don't have a feeling of love and understanding, keep your mouth shut. And I loved hearing that. It just got me, you know, it just dropped me from the intellect right back down into the heart where I needed to get back to. So great point. Thank you for pointing that out. And then, you know, we talk and sometimes I can share, but I love knowing that when a client had to leave and got evicted because of some violent behavior in the home, and I was a part of having to work through that with the client and find them a new place to live. And I just loved them the same as I did before they kicked that door down. And when I dropped them off and they hugged me and said that they loved me, and I said I loved them, and that was real. That was like, I couldn't make myself feel that. I just realized even deeper that we can be practical and we can do what we need to do in this life and maintain that feeling of love and understanding. We know where people's behavior is coming from. It's coming out of the best thinking they got going at the time. And there's something beyond that can wake up within them someday. I don't know when. It's none of my business. I don't get to decide that. I just keep showing up and with as much love as understanding as I can. And that brings me a clarity that I think is very powerful. You know, it's powerful for me because it allows me to keep loving regardless of what someone's behavior is.
That's the key. Like when we're ordinary, we don't have a problem connecting to people. But when we see ourselves as either bored with the same old, or we're a little bit wiser or better than somebody else, you know, that feeling, they feel that first, and secondly, you feel it, and you create a separation between them. And
this understanding, it just levels the playing field, you know, and that's really, I love that. It's not me and a client, it's just human beings. And I that's done so much for me in my work with clients that I can't even begin to,
They're lucky to
put it
have
into
you.
words.
That's for sure. They're lucky to have you.
Oh, Harry, it just becomes such a privilege wherever you find yourself, wherever life takes you and brings you. So thanks.
Beautiful. Wasn't that nice, guys? That was really beautiful. Really, right from the heart, where it should be. Anybody else? Huh?
I find that, that all too human roller coaster. I thought the three principles was going to, I was going to be happy ever after. And you still have your personality, your personal self to deal with. But I find that if I can relax and just not judge and be in the moment and allow the space for the good things to happen. It's almost like when I start that outside in, it crowds me into a tighter, smaller place where my personal side takes over. And when I just take a deep breath and relax and slow things down to the present moment, just let myself be, then I feel this expanding. And that expanding helps me transcend. It's like my true self is free and limitless. And I can feel that, and then I'm fine. So that's the feeling I get when I'm closer to the spiritual self, is a very free, expansive, joyful feeling. The other one is crowded and
You personify that, Marty. You can feel that about you almost the moment we take a look at you. Feel that. You not only live it, but you express it with your the feeling of who you are, and that spiritual freeness that you're talking about is what models other people to want to taste that within themselves, because of course they know it's them as well. One of the things I want to mention here, guys, even though we're here as a group, the power of this group is actually the amount of views we get after the show. So realize if you're sharing something on a beautiful level like Catherine and Marty were doing, the people after, we get tons of views after this show. That's the power of this group, is we share and then everybody picks up whatever it is that they can pick up. So Marty, when you share, and Catherine, when you share like that, it's not only just for us here in the moment, but for eternity, which is kind of a neat thing. I am sharing with eternity. How you doing, Chris? Good to see you.
Thank you. I'm a bit late because of the time differences, but now I'm here. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. We've been talking about the spiritual and psychological implications of addiction theoretically, and Catherine shared about the importance of the feeling, and Marty said it in a different way, but exactly the same thing about the feeling is what we're talking about. And when we're working with people, or we're connecting within ourself. And one of the things that Catherine said that spurred a thought, but I didn't act on it, was, is there one mind or two minds? In other words, is there a universal mind and a personal mind, or is there just mind? This should be an easy question. It's it's just yes or no.
There's the story of a second mind.
As I put my finger on it.
there is only the one mind, but our thoughts can create a second one, and that our thoughts will create those stories that, you know, say things like I'm an addict, or I'm an alcoholic, or I have to have chocolate cake, or you know, those types of things. But there's, like I was talking about earlier, that space inside that can't be harmed and can't really be touched. That's where the true mind comes from, the wisdom. The times when we learn to just settle down and stop trying to figure everything out, and then the answer comes. That's the true source. That's that wisdom that we all have access to. And every one of us has experienced that. At some point in our lives, we've been frustrated by some task or something we have to figure out. And as long as we try to use our thinking to figure it out, we just get more frustrated and get further away from the answer. And then when we finally say, F it, and, you know, let it go and move on to something else, suddenly it pops into our head. And it's the perfect answer, and it's exactly what we needed. If we could just learn to relax more often rather than trying to use our intellect to figure things out, those answers will come more often. It's just a matter of learning to listen for it rather than trying to force it. And I got to say, it's pretty amazing when that pops in. It can even come in when you're trying to use your intellect. I've experienced that too, for sure. But I'm much more likely to hear it when I'm being quiet.
Beautifully, very beautiful, Greg. That was gorgeous, really gorgeous.
I think didn't John have something he wanted to share?
Yeah, it's about, we have a theoretical guest speaker. John has a story about this, perhaps the cycle. Go ahead, just go ahead, John. Sorry, I didn't have anything to say there. Sorry.
Oh, well, thanks, Harry.
And Greg.
First of all, wow, what a lovely group of people here. I'm just very moved by what I hear. Catherine and Marty and Greg. Am I creating an echo?
No.
Okay. All three of you really kind of nailed it for me as far as, the theme of the day, if you want to think of it that way, both the psychological and spiritual implications of this understanding. I emailed or instant messaged Harry and said, people might be interested in hearing my story. And let me just preface what I'm going to say by saying, I want you to listen, if you don't mind. Listen for how easily we can be tricked by our personal thinking and get caught up in a misunderstanding, and how quickly we can wake up. Both. I am a mentee at Pransky and Associates in La Conner. And I would say, as another little preamble, I would say that if somebody had told me that, 6 months ago, that I'd be on a Zoom call talking about addiction, I would have said, "Wow, really?" I mean, I love to hang out with Three Principles people, but really? So here goes. I had basically a week in La Conner with the Pranskys scheduled in December. And 3 days before I was scheduled to go out there, 3 or 4 days before I was scheduled to go out there, I ran out of 2 prescription drugs, both of which I had been taking for years, around 15 years. And because they are controlled substances, it wasn't just a matter of going to the pharmacy and getting an automatic renewal. And the doctor had to phone it in, and one thing and another, it didn't happen. So I got on the plane with 3 or 4 days off of this medication and just beginning to feel a little strange. By the time I got out to La Conner, the first day I was there, working with them, I was in honest to God withdrawal from the prescription drugs that I had taken. Now, you might say, if you were taking these things for 15 years, did it never occur to you that, that you might have some kind of withdrawal if you went without for a while? Well, yeah. I mean, I had a few times where I'd been without them for a couple of days, and the things that happened to me in that short amount of time is they affected my salivary glands, and that they would begin to act a little strange, and my body would I would become sort of hypersensitive and hypervigilant and so on. But nothing that really, I guess, alerted me, or perhaps you could say I was in denial about it. Nothing that really alerted me that there was anything more serious than that going on. Well, I think by the third day that I was in La Conner, I was then six or 7 days off of this medication, and I was having what I would describe now as very severe withdrawals from these prescription drugs. I did not sleep the entire time I was in La Conner. As a matter of fact, I was there for 5 or 6 days. I left on the 6th day. I still hadn't had any sleep. My body began to feel like it's a little strange to describe, but my body began to feel like it was breaking down, like in parts, like it was becoming fragmented. My body was, and my body-mind system was very, very state of hypervigilance. And I was experiencing, I suppose you could say, high anxiety alongside it. And here's a little irony of it. One of the things that I was scheduled to do, and did do while I was out there, was I was scheduled to work with the client one-on-one. We were working on a Zoom call or a Skype call with, as it turned out, George Pransky observing me. And she was talking a little bit about panic attacks, and I told her about an experience I'd had with panic attacks back when I was in college, basically. And I said, somehow that morphed into a talk about a realization that I'd had before anything happened with these prescription drugs, a realization that I'd had that I had an addiction, but it probably, in my thinking at the time, I thought, well, this is kind of a genteel addiction, which is an arrogant thing to say. But it was a genteel addiction in that I was addicted to achievement. I was addicted to the need to achieve and achieve and achieve, and I felt like I was only as good as my last achievement and all that sort of thing. And I was trying to tell her, that can be as disabling in a lot of ways if you don't recognize that you're placing your well-being on something really outside of yourself in the world of form. And I said to her, thank God that, this is my client, I said, thank God that I did not become addicted to heroin or alcohol or serial sex or gambling or prescription drugs. And as soon as that last item left my lips, I went, oh my God, I just lied to this client. Because I'm clearly addicted to this stuff that I'm withdrawing from. And to talk about, the distraction of personal thinking, I did not tell George and Linda and Barb when I was out there what was happening to me. And they were a little freaked out. They're going, well, John is clearly never going to be a decent coach because he's bouncing off the walls. He's hyper anxious. He's just not cut out for this one-on-one stuff. I don't know. He's going to be a shitty coach. And they're in so many ways, in a nice way, they're telling me this. I got home, and I would say that it's now only been about 3 weeks since the full physical withdrawal has been over. So I want to read something to you, if I could. The two drugs that I have not had renewed, because I never want to go through this again, are a powerful sleep aid called temazepam and Xanax. Well, as soon as I got home, I got on Google and I Googled Xanax. Something I probably should have done 15 years earlier when it was prescribed to me, but it never occurred to me to do it. Or any of the times that I felt a little uncomfortable when I went without for a couple of days. Well, it turns out that I probably should have been under a doctor's care while I was in withdrawal out in La Conner. Here's just one thing that I pulled up about Xanax when I looked into it. A common drug used to treat panic disorders and anxiety, Xanax can cause some serious side effects. According to WebMD, slurred speech, loss of coordination, memory problems, and mood changes are some of the most common. By the way, I never had any of those. Then there's the potential for abuse. The American Addiction Centers say Xanax is one of the most addictive medications of its type, even when it isn't taken for a long period of time. Because there's a fair amount of risk involved, it might be worth talking to your doctor about whether this medication will truly serve your needs. It might be better to try an approach that doesn't involve a prescription in some cases, at least to start. So, what I'm able to say is that I couldn't possibly have been at a better place for this to happen to me. I mean, I don't even know if the Pranskys are aware yet of what happened to me. I've given an interview since that time in which I talk about this a little bit. So it may be filtering back to them. But in my personal thinking, one of the things that came up for me was I was too damn embarrassed to tell the Pranskys, who I hold in very high esteem, what was happening to me. So they didn't know what was happening to me. And in a sense, I didn't know what was happening to me either. And I had been around the principals already for 4 years. And the fact that I had, and the fact that I was in the embrace of the Pranskys, whether they knew what was happening to me or not, was absolutely, it was the most reassuring thing I could possibly say. And it could have
like being in the mother's womb, or in arms in a time when you actually needed to be in the arms of a mother.
Absolutely. Isn't that something? Yeah. And in the arms of my own wisdom. I mean, I recognized, because I'd had a fairly deep exposure to the principles, I recognized first that it would pass, that there would be some discomfort involved, and even some, and it was a little scary.
There's an example, John, of people that just the energy or the level of feeling is actually what allows you to relax, to see your own reality from a wise perspective. And that's what was happening with Sid. Was he would just talk, and then people would have all these insights about their personal life. And so that's the message for everybody. Your story is beautiful because it highlights they didn't have a clue what they were offering. They were just offering a feeling and a level of consciousness, and you were pretending to do your activity, but in reality, what you were doing, you were on a self-development course.
Yeah, no kidding.
Something that you had to see, and the feelings of it. And that's why when Catherine was talking, she's not caught up in the personal, because actual fact, solving someone's personal problems is very minor in comparison to the what you really need to know and what you need to experience. And that's a fabulous example of it. It's like they had no idea. Often Sid had no idea, and somebody in the back of the room would. You have something to say, Tanya? Or no? No. Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
go ahead, Tanya.
Oh no. But so when we're sharing beautiful feelings with ourselves, that's what we're opening up to, is the big picture. And when we're sharing personal problems with ourselves, we need assistance to either through walking in nature or being with a pal or listening to a tape or whatever it is that gets us to that place. And because I mean, it's an interesting story, but what I feel from it, John, is what impact it had on you. It really helped you.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things, Harry, that was really significant in the, if you will, the fallout of it when I got home was, while I was in the really hardcore feeling of the withdrawal, it was like everything. The scope of my consciousness was so small, and when I began
welcome to the club.
Yeah. when I began to realize that my experience was so incredibly ordinary, that my experience was no different than anyone else in the world, really. Because I mean, we all have our addictions. Some are, maybe get our attention a little bit more than others. But I just, it really struck me as I began to look outside of my personal thinking to that bigger picture that you're talking about, just how ordinary it was. And with that comes a kind of acceptance of yourself and an empathy and compassion for others. I know for a fact that I will never, confession, I'm sure that there have been times in my life when I've looked at somebody who's a known addict or is declared to be an addict in a judgmental way. Well, that sure as hell isn't going to happen again. Because now I see that, there's nothing special about my ego mind, about my personal mind. There's nothing special about me, except that I, like everyone else, have access to infinite potential, infinite possibility, infinite wisdom, if I look in the right direction. And so it's very humbling. I shed a few tears.
Beautiful.
And it was an epiphany, really. It was really an epiphany for me.
I can feel that. I love that, like, you didn't experience it through joy and happiness. You more experienced it through your own pride, in a way. Like to be over proud of who we are, to be out of balance in anything in life is a weak link in our in life.
Yeah, and what's interesting, you're saying that, because what I've been telling people now for about a month is I am like, so I'm experiencing the freedom of my own emotional life in a way that I never have before. And joy is a part of that. That, you know, I've had a couple of experiences with my daughter where she's just said something to me, and the love that I feel, I just turn into a big burbling, bawling baby when she says something to me because of the love. I read a poem by Seamus Heaney to somebody, and I'm halfway through the poem and I choke up, and it's not sadness tearing, it's exhilaration and joy tearfulness that I'm experiencing. And I've never probably, except maybe when I was a child, you know, when I was a young child, experienced that sort of thing. And I've been cut off from that for a really long time, armored by the defenses of the personal mind, you know. And so it's huge for me because, and I have absolutely no thinking about being completely free with my emotions. If I cry in front of a group of 1,000 people, that makes no difference to me, because it's just my way of saying, look at me, I'm human just like the rest of you, you know. It's big. It's huge.
You have something to say, Bob? No, okay, sorry. One of the things that we all have to experience as ordinary human beings is these horrible experiences that we theoretically are going through are just as uplifting, invigorating, rewarding, insightful as the other side of the fence. And when we step into that without getting caught up in the drama, or as what Greg would call the story of it, and we just experience it for what it is, the rewards are what John is describing. He had to face his ego, face perhaps his own image of who he thought he was and what he wanted to protect. And he found that what he was trying to protect was actually what he had to give up.
That's right.
And as he gave it up, he experienced a deeper sense of deep feelings of who he actually is. And he found that to be more rewarding than looking good on the outside or
That's right.
good with clients. He found out that his feelings, as he delved deeper into his soul, into his consciousness, his feelings expressed something of him as a human being. And that's the best, that's like the greatest gift in the universe, to have good feelings as a human being. And he found it in the place he wasn't looking. That's why we go through what we call the darker experiences, because we're hiding with our labels and our story about something that we need to separate ourselves from, so we can get into those feelings that John is describing. And that has become a big lesson for me, because when I was on Salt Spring, I got caught up in an image. It had to be positive. The only problem with that is I was defining what positive was. So I was keeping myself away from 62% of life's experiences because I had a very clear definition. And slowly but surely, life kicked me in the bum over and over again. And I didn't learn it very easily, but I started to have an understanding that life is a mysterious character, a wild horse that you have to get on and ride and get thrown off And then one day the horse looks at you and says, buddy, I like you. And you look at him and say, wouldn't have it any other way, pal. And then you got yourself a good ride, a really, really good ride. So I'm just a cowboy at heart, I guess. You know.
That's great, Harry.
Yeah. Anyone have anything more? Sorry, Greg, but you know about what we're talking about how the surprise of opening up to the psychological side of life in a spiritual way. See, that's Sid's message. It's the psychological side of us, but the answer lies in the spiritual feeling, not in the solving of problems. And as we solve problems, we label. I don't know how life got so easy, but I'm starting to notice how much I like it. That's about as big a compliment that I can give myself. I don't think I could have said that 10 years ago or 5 years ago. If life gets easier and easier as we step into wherever life wants to take us without opinions. When Anthony saw something that he experienced, so someone has something to say? Oh. When Anthony saw...
I've got something. But,
go for it. Yeah.
I didn't make the noise. I don't know where that came from. Thank you, John. I was so touched by what you were telling. I could have told some of the same stories, I think. But I was just listening today to something Sir Ken Robinson on a video, and he was mentioning the differences between how you learn and teach. And I was just he came with this analogy. I think you could use this here also, that in farming, if you just want to produce faster and bigger, you make a kind of industry and you have a produce and you use fertilizer, which is a bit like the drugs we're giving people. It's kind of a fertilizer. It's supposed to get a certain result. Versus organic farming, because in organic farming, you know that the soil, just could treat the soil right, and things will grow, because that's how nature works. So it's all about treating or nourishing what's natural, and I think in a way we get these drugs or whatever for sleeping or anxiety because we want to fit in, want to go to work or be able to do this and that as fast as possible, and make the pain go away. And in a way, why do we treat ourselves that way? Because we don't know, get better, I guess. And it's nice to wake up and see, well, actually my nervous system can take care of itself. That's a beautiful realization, that there's something else going on that's capable of sustaining me in my life. So thank you very much.
Something that I've been struck by recently, and both George Pransky and Michael Neal have mentioned this recently, and it makes sense to me, is that when it comes right down to it, it's not the substance, or with something like achievement, the idea of well-being coming from the world of form or from out there. It's not the substance that's the problem. In fact, the substance in a way is the solution, because a person is in pain because they are caught up in this innocent misunderstanding of where their experience is coming from. and they want that pain to go away. And so the use of a substance or a behavior, or whatever it is a solution that it and you know, when you're working with people in addiction, I think it's probably important to acknowledge that that you know, the phrase that we often use is people are always doing the best they can at the level of consciousness from which they're working in the moment. It's not the best solution, and it's not the only solution, and it's not going to be, you know, it's not going to serve the individual in the long term. But it makes a kind of sense if a person is experiencing a level of pain that they have not learned any other way of dealing with. And so, you know, that really puts to me talking about the whole subject of addiction in an entirely different framework. Because, you know, to treat the addiction itself, the substance, as the problem is sort of similar to what the one solution people are saying this week, is that what we tend to do is throw money and time and attention at symptoms of the real problem.
That's why we emphasize the feelings, John. It's because then we don't have to get into the description of the affair and what is actually happening, type of thing. Because in the description, what happens is the feeling lowers, and then the level drops, because you're describing in a perfect analogy the problem. Where in reality, which of course you want to have a little bit of understanding of, but in the breath of the Holy Spirit is where the lift is, and when the people are lifted, then they don't look at the problem. They look for the feeling inside themselves, and when they find that connection, like Anthony was talking about, he found something inside himself. After that, he could look at the description from a higher perspective, because he was feeling good about himself. The problem is describing things when you don't feel good. Well, that's ego on ego, piling on ego, and it gets bigger and bigger, the dump, you know, the poop. So we want to make sure we keep the feeling in this heavy topic at where we're pointing to the principles inside people, not in describing the description of the event. And
I love the fact that you mentioned at the beginning of the call that, you know, it's really important to try to keep things lighthearted, and it reminded me of some of the laughter that I experienced, because one of the things that happens is when you wake up, you see ironies, and the ironies are, you know, you acquire the ability to laugh at the human condition and laugh at yourself, and you laugh wholeheartedly. It's not a timid laugh. It's not a half-hearted laugh at all. It's like, you know, it's a cosmic laugh.
yeah, we are pretty funny. There's no doubt. Yeah, it's. I guess that's why I like laughing at myself so much, because I'm such a funny guy, you know, such a crazy, bizarre type of thing. But I wouldn't change it for the world, to be honest. It's good to be so special and unique on one level. You know, everybody here bringing a special talent and love, you know, in their own flavor. That's the beauty of thought. You can color it any way you want, you know, and see it any way you want to see it. If I want to see myself as funny, yeah, I certainly have that ability to do that. If I want to see myself as heavy, I certainly have the ability to do that, you know, type of thing. You know, I sent Greg a joke on the morning because I said he'd never tell a joke, and he did tell one on the talk, but it was such a lousy joke that I figured I'd send it. And he said, "Well, that's a good one," type of thing. So, I just did it for fun, but yeah. But I'm glad he wrote it. So
I think I have a little bit better one now, Harry.
Okay.
It's still not going to be a great one.
Oh, okay.
But the only great ones I know are not appropriate to tell in public places. But why do seagulls fly over the sea?
Oh, you're going to tell it. Okay.
Yeah, because if they flew over the bay, they'd be bagels.
Oh.
I know, that's terrible. But it is better than the other one.
That's his best one, guys. So.
That sadly it is.
So
no, this has been a great conversation today, and I myself in my life right now, I'm going through a lot of major changes, and I've been experiencing a lot more of the back and forth and in and out of my story lately, and it's really interesting for the times when I'm in it. I'm more like the observer now, instead of being totally caught up in it every time. I'm still getting caught up in it at times, but there's still that space within that just feels okay, and knows that everything has already worked out. I just can't see it yet. And there's a beauty to that, even in the midst of feeling, pain and going through a struggle and everything, I can still feel okay. And I can still go out and have fun with friends, and I can still, experience I want to feel the whole spectrum of life. To me, that's what I want out of this experience of life. I don't want to just sit in a neat little box somewhere and say, oh, everything's great. Everything's fine. I know I'm never sad. I'm never unhappy. I'm never angry. I'm never, what kind of life is that? That's like going to an all-you-can-eat restaurant and just eating one type of food. It just doesn't make any sense. I'm here for this entire experience, and the pain and suffering that I've gone through in this past week has really created quite a bit of growth. And it's created a brand new experience of life for me. And it's not quite as beautiful as I'd like it to be yet, but it's as beautiful as it's supposed to be. And that's a big difference for me now, is not just this last couple of days, just learning not to try to change it. It just is as it is right now. And that's okay. And anybody who's just trying to get away from whatever their addiction is, understand that you're probably going to go back to it. And that's okay. You've done it for a long time. Like we were talking about earlier, about it being the solution. It's been your solution for a long time. It's just being human to go back to it. Don't beat yourself up over it. Just pick yourself up and get back on the path you want to be on. And if you slip back again, so what? Get over it and move forward. It's in the beating up of yourself that really creates more pain and more shame and sorrow and anguish and all of those bad things that make you want to have that solution in the first place. So don't add to your own misery. And I could say that from personal experience. I'm pretty good at adding to my own misery.
And there does come a point where all of a sudden the insight is deep enough where you actually are totally free. But not totally free in the sense that you can't pull it back up, but totally free that your preference is not to go there anymore. Your personal power has gained a level where it's more powerful than the other thought. And that's what personal power is. You grow, and all of a sudden this thought comes in, but it really has no power anymore. And that's an automatic state of consciousness, not a will level. You will be free if for the ones, and everybody has memories and thoughts that pop in, but when your personal power reaches a certain level, it doesn't, it's just poof, you're just not interested in it. And so it has no validity. Every thought needs intent. If you don't give it, if your personal power is at a level, intent. So you're just growing in personal power, and growing in what you do, what, like all of us, the best state of mind. I don't know. That's the best state. I don't know. I don't know. All I know is at a certain place inside of myself, whatever it was that I was addicted to, it just doesn't have any power anymore. It doesn't mean I can't go back into it, but it just doesn't mean why would I? And so it's more an automatic state of mind, rather, in my opinion. I might be wrong about this, guys. Just remember that. I can be wrong. I might be wrong about this, but to me, that's the way I see it, and I'm experiencing it. And
that's really what I'm seeing, is that what I'm learning now is exactly where I've been, where, as far as my level of understanding goes. There's a lot of things that just don't bother me anymore. There's a lot of things that, I just kind of watch pass by. It's like the noisy car that drives by. There's nothing you have to do about it. It's just going to show up and make some noise for a while, and next thing you know, it'll be gone and you'll never see it again. So that's been my experience, is things slowly but surely, as my level of understanding is rising, less things are actually bothering me. It's not that circumstances have changed that much in my life. They're starting to. It's beautiful. But even when those old circumstances come back up, I'm handling them entirely differently. And the way that I'm handling them most of the time is to not even have to handle them. I mean, it's such a neat thing. It's still kind of bizarre for me, because I've spent so many years in that cycle of trying to fix everything and trying to make bad stuff go away, things that I've labeled as bad. It's a really refreshing experience to just be able to let it flow. And if I learn nothing else from this experience that I'm going through, it'll be to let things flow.
well, that seems like a good place to maybe call I love that. That very beautiful, Greg. Very, very beautiful. Honestly, very beautiful, and very, very deep in what you shared. So the message is, have fun and be real, I guess today.
Right.
Yeah.
And a big thanks to everybody for showing up again. I always enjoy this every week. It's kind of one of the bright spots of my week, to get together with everybody and just have this wonderful discussion and get that great feeling.
Yes, absolutely.
So join us again next week, and we'll have another great discussion, and I'll have this uploaded to YouTube in a short while. So thanks again, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
And if you have a topic or